January 3rd, 2019, and I was monitoring the House first opening session for the 116th Congress today, and I was particularly interested in the bill that I brought you the other day, which is House 6. It is the new House rules for the democratically controlled Congress. Let's take a look.
This question is ordered.
Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose the gentleman from Oklahoma seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I offer a motion to commit.
Without objection, the clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Cole of Oklahoma moves that the resolution, House Resolution 5, be committed to a select committee composed of the Majority Leader and the Minority Leader, with instructions to report back the same to the House forthwith, with only an amendment added at the end providing for the consideration of House Resolution 11, introduced by Mr. McCarthy of California.
Without objection, the previous question is ordered. On the motion to commit. The question is on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Mr. Speaker, on that I demand the yeas and nays.
The noes have it. Gentleman from Oklahoma.
Mr. Speaker, on that I'd like to request the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. All those in favor taking this vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 15-minute vote.
As this happened, we switched over and Sarah Sanders introduced the president at the White House.
Beautiful place. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to everybody. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you. I just want to start off by congratulating Nancy Pelosi on being elected Speaker of the House. It's a very, very great achievement. And hopefully we're going to work together and we're going to get lots of things done like infrastructure and so much more. I know they want to do that very badly, so do I. So hopefully we're going to have a lot of things that we can get done together. And I think it's actually going to work out. I think it'll be a little bit different than a lot of people are thinking. So I congratulate Nancy. Tremendous, tremendous achievement. And I just wanted to explain to folks that I'm with on the dais, people I've known very well over the last 2 years, people that have been extremely supportive of what we're doing on the border. They're tough, they're smart, they think, they love our country, they have every quality, and I'll tell you what, I really know them well, and they have the kind of qualities that we need in our country, and they've done a fantastic job at the border. It's ICE and it's Border Patrol, and a man who's really become a friend in a sense, Brandon, I will say this, Brandon Judd has been a stalwart in terms of justice for people, in terms of fairness, and in terms of the toughness you need. You have some pretty tough situations. It doesn't get much tougher. So I just want to thank Brandon and all of the folks. I'm going to have them introduce themselves right now and also say a few words about the wall, about, you can call it a barrier, you can call it whatever you want, but essentially we need protection in our country. We're going to make it good. The people of our country want it. I have never had so much support as I have in the last week over my stance for border security, for border control, and for, frankly, the wall or the barrier. I have never had anything like it in terms of calls coming in terms of people writing in and tweeting and doing whatever they have to do. I've never had this much support, and we've done some things that, as you know, have been very popular. So I'm going to ask Brandon Judd to just step forward and say a few words. This group has apprehended last year 17,000 criminals trying to get across the border. 17,000. And that's one category. There are plenty of others. The other thing that has been so incredible is what they've done in terms of drugs and stopping drugs. And with that, and with everything else, plenty, unfortunately, come through our southern border. But I'm going to ask Brandon to come up, say a few words, and maybe introduce our friends and some very brave people. Brandon, please. Thank you.
Thank you, President.
Thank
we
you.
really
Thank
appreciate
you.
all the support that you've given the Border Patrol. We appreciate the support that you've given ICE. My name is Brandon Judd. I'm the president of the National Border Patrol Council. I've been a Border Patrol agent for 21 years. I can personally tell you from the work that I have done on the southwest border that physical barriers, that walls actually work. You hear a lot of talk from the expert that there are experts that say that walls don't work. I promise you that if you interview Border Patrol agents, they will tell you that walls work. I worked in Naco, Arizona for 10 years. We didn't have physical barriers in Naco, and illegal immigration and drug smuggling was absolutely out of control. We built those walls, those physical barriers, and illegal immigration dropped exponentially. Anywhere that you look where we have built walls, they have worked. They have been an absolute necessity for Border Patrol agents in securing the border. We need those physical barriers, and we appreciate President Trump and all of his efforts in getting us those physical barriers. There's also a lot of talk on this shutdown that federal employees do not agree with the shutdown. I will tell you that's not true. And with that, I'd like to introduce Art Del Cueto. He is the Vice President of the National Border Patrol Council. He's also a longtime Border Patrol agent out of the Tucson sector, and he'd like to say a few words about the shutdown.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Once again, my name is Art Del Cueto. I am a Vice President with the National Border Patrol Council. And I want everybody to take the time to understand what's going on. We are all affected by this shutdown. We have skin in the game. However, it comes down to border security. And we are extremely grateful to President Trump, and we fully support what he is doing to take care of our nation's borders, to take care of the future of this United States. It has nothing to do with political parties. You all gotta ask yourself this question. If I come to your home, do you want me to knock on the front door, or do you want me to climb through that window? We fully support the president and all his efforts to secure our nation's borders.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hector Garza. I'm the Vice President of the National Border Patrol Council. I am also a Border Patrol agent of the Texas border. I just want to talk about some of those criminals that Border Patrol agents apprehend on a daily basis. We're talking about murderers, rapists, people that commit very serious crimes in this country. ICE has been doing an amazing job in deporting a lot of these people back to their countries. Unfortunately, once we deport these people will not stay in their country. These criminal aliens that have been released from jail, that have been deported, will come right back into the United States. However, if we had a physical barrier, if we had a wall, we won't be able to stop that.
I didn't realize that I had left the audio of the House going during the president's address, and I went to check on the House, and the audio just went out of sync for this whole clip. So I apologize for that. The vote failed. Let's go back to the
Sufficient number
president.
having arisen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device.
Had lowest in 50 years, and among certain groups, it's the lowest historically. So I just appreciate them being here. I said, let's go out, see the press. You can tell them about the importance of the wall. They basically said, and I think I can take the word basically out, without a wall, you cannot have border security. Without a very strong form of barrier, call it what you will, but without a wall, you cannot have border security. It won't work. You see what's just been put out on social media, where thousands of people are rushing the border. Having a drone fly overhead, and I think nobody knows much more about technology, this type of technology certainly, than I do. Having drones and various other forms of sensors, they're all fine, but they're not going to stop the problems that this country has. We've never had more people wanting to come to the United States, and that has to do with the economy, and it has to do with a lot of other things. We're doing great as a country, but the better we do, the more people want to come in. So, folks, I just want to thank you very much. It's an honor to be with you, and I'm glad you came. I'm glad we came out here. And the first time I've ever done this is the first time I've done it. I've done it for you, and I'm very proud of that because you have done a fantastic job. And I want to thank you all. Chris, thank you very much. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
You can see Jim Acosta has a protege who pointed out vociferously that the point of having a press briefing is to take questions, in her opinion. So let's go back to the floor as they are actually talking about
Congressman John
House
Sarbanes for his
Resolution
tireless
6.
efforts on that bill, and look forward to bringing it to the floor. Next, Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton from the District of Columbia, the resident commissioner from Puerto Rico, and delegates in the territories will once again be permitted to vote on amendments and help shape legislation as they seek to add the voices of millions of people they represent. We will also end the practice of allowing appropriation bills to target hard-working federal employees by cutting individual salaries, programs, or office sizes. In fixing the broken legislative process, Mr. Speaker, Democrats will restore regular order to the House. Our new rules package will make it harder to throw the House into partisan chaos, and it includes new measures that facilitate bipartisanship, including by making it easier to force a vote on legislation supported by a majority of members. Our rules improve oversight and ethics in several ways, including, for example, by making it easier for staff to report harassment and close remaining loopholes allowing conflicts of interest. Also, Mr. Speaker, no longer will members or staff be allowed to serve on corporate boards, giving rise to conflicts of interest. Democrats will return to common sense budget practices, such as eliminating Republicans' use of dynamic scoring and reinstating the Gephardt rule to prevent the default on our debt. The rules package, Mr. Speaker, also takes a step towards restoring pay-go, which ensures that Congress has to pay for what it buys. Additionally, our rules package promotes diversity and inclusion by specifically banning discrimination against lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender members and staff, as well as ensuring that members and staff who wear religious head coverings can do so on the House floor without impediment. We are also creating an independent diversity office to help members hire qualified staff who reflect the broad and diverse range of the constituents that we represent. Mr. Speaker, this rules package signals a new start for the House. We will go from the most closed Congress in history to a period when Americans finally have a House that is on their side. With these rules, Mr. Speaker, we will make government work again for those it serves. And hopefully, Mr. Speaker, they will also facilitate a process which will not close down the people's government. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Maryland reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise as the designee of the Republican leader, and I want to thank my good friend, the Majority Leader, for yielding me 15 minutes. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, a couple of hours ago, we had a spirited debate that also reflected the way I hope both sides proceed and intend to approach the next 2 years, disagreeing without being disagreeable. In that respect, today represents a good start for the new Congress. Mr. Speaker, earlier today I had an opportunity to speak on the rules package my Democratic friends are proposing for the 116th Congress. I laid out most of what I had to say then, but I want to reiterate a few key points.
First, while on the whole I will be opposing this package, I do want to commend my friends for including some good bipartisan pieces that Republicans certainly can support. We support, for example, continuing the practice of member day hearings. We support the idea of a select committee on the modernization of Congress, which we will discuss in more detail tomorrow. We are hopeful about other measures, such as the 72-hour rule for posting bill text and the proposed consensus calendar. We look forward to seeing how these proposals work in practice. Of course, my Democratic friends are also proposing a number of measures that we oppose. They are removing key fiscal responsibility measures like Cutco, the supermajority for raising income taxes, and bringing back the so-called Gephardt rule and deeming the debt limit to be suspended upon passage of a new budget by only the House. These changes will undoubtedly lead to more spending, more taxes, and more debt being piled on the American people. We also oppose the granting of the Speaker the authority to intervene in the Texas versus the United States lawsuit over the legality of the Affordable Care Act, and the unspecified grant of authority to do something, anything, about regulations that the Department of Agriculture has yet issued on SNAP benefits for able-bodied adults. And most notably, we oppose the new partisan select committee on the climate crisis with a supermajority of Democrats, in contrast to the agreed-upon ratio on other committees and unclear funding and costs. While I continue to hope that on our side we proceed appropriately, I do not believe this rules package represents the best way to govern this institution. The Democrats have chosen today to increase spending, add a partisan select committee to the institution, and pave the way to pass tax and spend legislation. I do not believe these rules meet the lofty goals we aspire to meet of transparency, bipartisanship, and ensuring minority views are heard. With that, and for these reasons, and for others that I stated earlier today, I urge opposition to the measure, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Speaker, while I regret that the gentleman opposes the rule, I appreciate his bipartisanship and his hope, which I share, that we will proceed in a fashion that will make the American people proud, and very frankly, we can be proud of ourselves for accomplishing that which the American people wants accomplished. With that, Mr. Speaker, I would yield the balance of my time to the chairman of the Rules Committee to complete our side of the argument, Mr. Jim McGovern, who's done such an extraordinary job in putting these rules together. And I yield to my friend from
Thank you, Mr.
Massachusetts.
Speaker. I want to thank the Majority Leader for yielding me the time, and I yield myself such time as I may consume. Mr. Speaker, a rules package may seem like some arcane technicality, a simple legislative move on opening day of a Congress, but it's really much more than that. This is our first opportunity to declare what kind of institution this House will be. I'm proud that through collaboration and conversation, we have drafted a rules package that boldly declares that it's a new day for Congress. This package reflects the diversity of our new majority. Ideas are included here from members that represent urban and rural parts of the country, longtime leaders, and those who have taken the oath of office for the very first time today. We come from different backgrounds and have been elected here on different platforms, but each of us shares the same goal: making this place work again. Not just function better legislatively, though that's important, but also respond more urgently to the needs of the people that we represent. That's why this rules package sets up consideration of H.R. 1, historic reforms to clean up money in politics. It creates a select committee on the climate crisis, strengthens representation by giving voting rights to delegates and the resident commissioner in the committee of the whole, and ensures that they can be appointed to joint committees. It prohibits members and staff from serving on boards of publicly traded companies. It eliminates Cutco and creates the first ever diversity office. And I could go on and on and on. And this rules package isn't some totally partisan document. It includes ideas from my friends on the other side of the aisle, too. Because when I said at the start of this process that I wanted to hear from all members, I meant it. Good ideas are included here regardless of what side of the aisle they come from. Changes like creating a consensus calendar to move ideas with broad support more quickly to the floor, reforming the motion to vacate the chair, and strengthening the 3-day rule for committee markups are here because we took such a collaborative approach, and this package is stronger for it. Make no mistake, no one abandoned their principles. I'm a progressive, and I know the Republican majority, I know the Republican minority would never agree with me on priorities like health care or the environment. There were things here I know they wouldn't put in their own package. But in talking to each other to see where we agreed, there was actually agreement on many legislative reforms. I know that there are many members here who will think of more ideas for how to improve this place, and I want to hear them. And our leadership does too. That's why we're creating a truly bipartisan select committee on modernizing Congress, so our efforts don't stop here today. These conversations can continue, and good ideas can keep moving forward. There has never been a process like this to develop a rules package. This has been unprecedented, and we have a historic set of reforms here as a result. They send a signal to the American people and members here that the 116th Congress will be different, that it's a new era, that we are abandoning procedures that didn't work, and we are adopting new ideas. This Democratic majority is giving all members a voice. We're listening to the American people, and we're holding this administration accountable. This will be a more accommodating institution as a result, a more responsive House, and a place that looks more like the real world. That is what's at the heart of what we're debating. Right here on day one, we have a chance to vote to be a different kind of Congress, one that turns the page on the past and charts a new course. The American people demanded a new direction by a 10 million vote margin. I know my colleagues in the majority want to see one too. And even some of my Republican friends acknowledge that something has to change. So this is our chance. I strongly urge my colleagues to take this opportunity. Let's vote for this rules package and give members of the American people the Congress that they deserve. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield 90 seconds to my good friend, distinguished gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Womack.
The gentleman is recognized.
I thank the gentleman. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in opposition to HRS 6. I appreciate the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern, and the new majority leadership, including items of budget process reform in this package to include the House Budget Committee members, eliminating term limits for them. And I hope there are other things that we did as a joint bipartisan committee, tried to get across the finish line, but were unable to do so. Perhaps we can work on some of those. But, Mr. Speaker, for the few bright spots that HRS 6 has, they in no way make up for the shortcomings. This package does not rise to fiscal responsibility. First, it includes a new iteration of the Gephardt rule that's been spoken about, increasing the debt limit even easier by automatically passing debt limit increases without separate debate and vote. The package also replaces the existing budget enforcement rule, known as CUTGO, with a PAYGO rule that was in place when Democrats passed many programs in the past, like Obamacare, that added to our country's debt burden. To be clear, PAYGO does not encourage fiscal discipline under a Democrat majority. Finally, Mr. Speaker, HRS 6 reduces the threshold for passage of income tax increases on hardworking Americans from a 3/5 to a simple majority vote. I'm not surprised that the first step that the Democrats take in this process is surrendering the obligation to approve increases to the debt and enacting rules which make it easier to borrow and raise taxes. I urge my colleagues to vote against this rules package, and I'll yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman's time has expired.
The gentleman, we have a CBS News reporter, posted today that the U.S. Treasury shows that the national debt ended 2018 more than $2 trillion larger than on the day President Trump took office. So, with all due respect to my friends on the other side of the aisle, your CUTGO didn't work. It's a sham. And what the majority has presided over is record-breaking deficits, increases in the deficit and in the debt. So I think we need to take a very different approach. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert in the record a section by section of the changes HRS 6 will make to the standing rules of the 115th Congress and the separate orders taking effect for the 116th Congress.
Without objections.
And Mr. Speaker, with that, I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey, someone who we work with very closely on this rules package, Mr. Gottheimer.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, is this one working? Is this one working? You guys here? Okay, thanks. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of our new rules package that will help get more broadly based bipartisan legislation to the floor for a debate and a vote. Both in New Jersey and in Washington, D.C., people are frustrated that Congress can't get things done, whether it's completing the Critical Gateway Project back home between New York and New Jersey, or getting health care premiums down, cutting red tape, or lowering our taxes. Common sense ideas with broad bipartisan support often never make it to the House floor because a handful of splinter obstructionists use old school tricks to block common sense ideas. After years of hearing these complaints in diners and town halls at home, a group I co-chair called the Problem Solvers Caucus, comprised of half Democrats and half Republican members, 7 months ago called for a reform package to break the gridlock. Especially in this era of divided government, where you have a Democratic House and a Republican Senate and White House, to get things done, Congress will have to work together to deliver legislation with broad support. Whether that's fixing our infrastructure or getting health care costs down, we're going to have to work together. Today we will take the first step with both Republicans and Democrats voting on the rules package that includes many of the Problem Solvers break the gridlock ideas, including the new consensus calendar and modernizing the motion to vacate and discharge petition. The changes that we're making will also allow a full 3 days for us to actually read legislation before we vote on it, letting us have a full understanding of what we're voting on. Just common sense. We're also requiring hearings and markups on major legislation. Again, all things that just seem like common sense that we should be doing. I'm deeply proud of this chamber, and I want to thank Speaker Pelosi and Chairman McGovern and their excellent teams for their hard work in reforming the House. And I want to thank my co-chair of the Problem Solvers Caucus, Congressman Tom Reed from New York, and the whole Problem Solvers Caucus for this big step in their work in a more cooperative and productive and bipartisan House of Representatives. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to yield 90 seconds to my good friend, the distinguished lady from Puerto Rico, Ms. Gonzalez.
Thank you.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you.
Listen very carefully to what she says about the territory's ability to vote in Congress.
Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Chairman McGovern, for your leadership and this opportunity. As the only member representing Puerto Rico in this Congress, I represent 3.2 million American citizens living on the island. And there are 5.4 million Puerto Ricans living in the mainland. So today, while we are discussing this resolution that will give delegates and the resident commissioner the opportunity to vote in the Committee of the Whole, one issue that triggers me being here is that our vote would only count if the cast votes are not deciding votes. So we can vote in the Committee of the Whole, as the rules it's providing, but if the casting votes are in contest, then you need to do a second round vote without the territories. And that is like a symbolic vote. And that's the reason the people of Puerto Rico want to become a state. That's the only way we can achieve 4 members of Congress representing Puerto Rico in the House, 2 members on the Senate side, not just using a symbolic vote in this House. As a matter of an example, a few minutes ago, our names, the territories delegates' names were on the board. We can't vote in regular bills, we can't vote in anything else. So it will look like we are not present during the debates. It will look like we are not present in this floor of the House whenever there's a real discussion in this floor, but our name's still there. We can vote yes, we can vote no. So.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I will yield back the balance of my time, but I think it's not a symbolic vote. This is a good step, but we should have the full right votes. Thank you.
The gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I might actually consent to insert in the record a statement on the interpretation of Clause 8 of Rule 2.
Without objection.
And I'd also like to ask unanimous consent to insert in the record a list of all members and caucuses who offered ideas and proposals for House Resolution 6 and thank these members and for their contributions.
Without objection.
And with that, Mr. Speaker,
Gentleman from
Mr. Speaker, I just remind the gentleman in the last 2 years the Republicans have exploded the debt by $2 trillion. I reserve my.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. May I inquire, my friend, I'm prepared to close whenever my friend is. Okay. Thank you, Mr.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In closing, I want to begin by urging all members to oppose this measure. While the rule package includes some provisions Republicans can certainly support, it unfortunately includes too many provisions that we cannot. The rule package today removes important fiscal responsibility measures from House rules, establishes a partisan climate committee, grants the Speaker the power to intervene in a lawsuit over the legality of the ACA. Those are all things that my conference, quite frankly, is unanimously opposed to. I do want to address, just in passing, my friend's discussion about the deficit.
And so we leave it there with Representative Tom Cole of Oklahoma rebutting some closing statements by his colleague from Maryland. We hope you found this interesting. If you've never watched how the Senate or the House operate and don't understand why it takes so long to get everything done, well, the example, more than one example today of a 15-minute vote taking 45 minutes is one reason. So I hope you learned something. I hope you found the president's remarks interesting, as well as Border Patrol firsthand comments. And with that, for me and the Shepherd, we hope you have a great evening. And if you're hearing this tomorrow morning on January 4th, we hope you have a good morning. Till we see you again.